What's going on, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage, and in today's video we are going to be tearing into our 2011 Hyundai Elantra. So for those of you that are new to the channel or haven't been following this project, we picked this thing up with a snapped timing belt. Timing belt is broken. Now in our last video we bore scoped all 4 cylinders and we found some signs of contact, piston to valve contact on cylinders number 1 and cylinder number 3. So before we fully commit here to pulling this cylinder head, there is one trick that I have up my sleeve that I want to try. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pull this valve cover and get it up out of the way, and then we are going to pull the exhaust and the intake cams and get them out of the way. And what that's going to do is that's going to ensure that all 16 valves are closed. And then we're going to go ahead and leak down test each cylinder. Now if we have excessive leak down, again I'm assuming I'm going to have leak down on 1 and 3 based on what we saw with the bore scope. But this is going to give me a definitive answer on whether or not this cylinder head has to come off. Maybe the valves didn't hit hard enough to bend and it was just a little kiss, or what have you. Today we're going to find that out. So the first thing we're going to do here is just take some shop air and we're going to blow all the dirt off the top of this valve cover. That way when we pull it off we don't induce any dirt into the top end of the engine, because that's never a good thing. So let's go ahead. Again, we're just going to blow off all that loose dirt. And now we're going to go get our impact gun with a 10mm socket, and we're going to go around, pull all the bolts from the valve cover, and we're going to remove these 2 vacuum hoses. Okay, that should come right off. Okay, get them off. We're going to go ahead and get a screwdriver and pry that valve cover off. There it comes. So this valve cover has likely never been off, so it's kind of almost glued on. But the top of this engine actually looks like it's in really, really good shape for the miles, but I can already tell you number 3's got some damaged valves. Let me show you how I can tell. Alright, so what I am focusing on right now is the height of the valves right now. And if you look at number 3, this is cylinder number 3 here, you can see that gap between the camshaft and the buckets. Right now there is nothing acting on those valves to keep them open, yet they are being held open, and that tells me that they are likely bent. Now, number 1 intake side might be like that as well, but it's kind of hard to tell from this angle. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to remove these camshafts. So when you remove these camshafts, these caps are numbered, and they have to stay in the position that they are in from the factory, because they are machined to the head. So definitely do not mix them up, and you want to start on the outside and work your way in, because camshafts are hardened and they can snap very easily. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this tensioner. It's these two 10mm bolts here, and then we can go ahead and start working on getting the cam off. Okay, and I'm just going to put these bolts back in where we removed them from. Now we're going to work on getting the cams out. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start here on the outside. Take this extension off actually. Sorry about that, my impact gun's a little weak here. She's old, so we're gonna just crack these loose. We'll get them off the rest of the way. Now, like I said, it's super important that you keep these caps in order. They are numbered, but just to be safe, make sure you don't mess that up. Sometimes you can grab them with a pair of pliers here and just rock them side to side like that. There we go. We're just going to go ahead and get this cam out. Go ahead, get the intake cam ready to come out. That one was stubborn. All right. So now these cam caps will again come right out. Do not mix them up. Now we can go ahead, take this chain off, and get these cams out. And once we get the cam out, we're just going to go ahead and lightly reinstall our cam caps so that we do not mix them up. And then again, what I'm looking at here is the height that these valve buckets are sitting, and number 3 is sitting much lower than the rest. So I'm willing to bet that we have an issue there. But I do just really quickly want to show you that these are actually numbered. You can see E1 right there. So even if you do accidentally kind of, you know, mix them up, there is a backup plan for you. All right, so now that we have the cams out of the way, I want you to kind of visualize this. You see how high that bucket is? That one, those two. Now, if you look at this one compared to this one, you can see how sunken down that is. And that tells me, like I said earlier, that those valves are being held open. And they're likely being held open because they are bent. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and pull all 4 of our spark plugs out. And we're going to go get our leak down tester. Now, in theory, all 16 of these valves right now should be closed. And we're going to check leak down on 1, 2, 3, and 4. Again, I'm assuming I'm going to have 100% leak down coming out of the intake here on number 3, just based on how far open those valves are. But hopefully, you know, maybe we got lucky and numbers 1, 2, and 4 are okay. But either way, at this point, I can safely say this head is coming off. So what we have here is an OTC cylinder leakage tester kit. It's kit 5609. I will leave a link to one of these guys in the video description below. And like I said, this is going to tell us what kind of leak down we have, and then we can kind of narrow down where it's coming from. So the first thing that we need to do here is we have to install this barb on here because I have a different one on it. So let me go tighten that down. Actually, let's make sure that this is the correct one. Yes, it is. So let me go tighten this down right here, and then we'll go ahead and set this guy up. Okay, so what we do here is we want to turn this knob until this is at 100. We were just about at 100 before, but I just want to make sure that we weren't above 100. Okay, so we're at 100, and now we're going to go ahead and pull the spark plugs out and connect our kit. All right, guys, we have our hose here into number 1. So let's go ahead and plug this in. And we have 50% leak down on number 1. So that's going to tell me that we have some bent valves on number 1. Now what we could do from this point is try to narrow it down by listening out of the exhaust or listening through the intake. So I'm going to go ahead by the exhaust real quick. I'm going to stick my ear there and I'm going to see if I can hear any hissing. Let's go take a walk. Yep, we have air coming out of the exhaust. If you listen, you'll hear it pop. You ready? So we have bent exhaust valves, at least, on number 1. Let me bring it down here real quick and show you. So let's go ahead, here's the exhaust. I'm gonna stick my hand over it. You hear it puff? Okay. And again, that's kind of what we expected. We saw some indents on number 1 in our video the first time. So let's go ahead and move over to number 2 now. All right, we're set up on number 2. We have about 10% leak down on number 2, which for a 180,000 mile engine, that's kind of what you would expect to see. You want to see between 10 to 15% at max. So this is a little bit on the high side, but I'm not thinking I have any bent valves here. I'm thinking if we pull these valves out and lap them, I think we'll be in good shape. But let's go ahead and check number 3 now, which is where I see my obvious problem on the intake side. Okay, here we are on number 3. We have, we have like almost 90% leak down, and I can actually hear it coming out of the intake here, out of this intake hose. You hear the difference? So our intake valves on number 3 are definitely bent. Okay, and on number 4, we have about a 8 to 10% leak down. So number 2 and number 4 are my only 2 good cylinders. We have an issue with the exhaust on number 1, and we have an issue with the intake on number 3. So nothing has changed from our last video. It's off with her head. Whenever I get back out here, I'm going to do this in this video, so we're not going to do another video. We're going to continue this video. We'll go ahead and start tearing this thing down. Alright guys, so today we are going to start, really getting into the disassembly process here. So the first thing I went ahead and did off camera, I just slid my radiator drain here up under the car, and then we're going to go right down on the passenger side of the radiator, and we are going to pull the radiator petcock, and we're going to loosen it. Okay, and then we're going to pop our radiator cap off. Move you back a little bit so you can see exactly what's going on here. We're going to pull our radiator cap right down here off. See it right there. Okay, you're going to push down and twist, and then lift. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and let that radiator start draining. While it's draining, we're going to go ahead and start pulling the intake snorkel here off. Real simple, 2 10mm bolts. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and start getting the airbox out. Now the airbox is equally as simple. We already have most of the vacuum lines disconnected here off of this hose. So we're just going to go ahead and unclip all 4 clips. And we're going to take, again, our impact gun and simply unscrew that clamp. And then we're going to lift and twist. Okay. And off it comes like so. Check our air filter. It's actually in pretty good shape. Not even going to worry about replacing that. And now we're going to go ahead and pull our airbox bottom out. Looks like it's held in with one 10mm and a rubber grommet. Okay. 2 10mm. Now the PCM is actually a part of this airbox, so I'm going to go ahead now, at this point, we'll disconnect the negative terminal here because we're going to be doing some in-depth surgery here on this car, and we'll go ahead and pull the whole airbox out with the PCM. Okay guys, now that we got that out of our way, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to start unclipping vacuum hoses here. We're going to have one here that leads to the brake booster that we're going to have to remove. There's going to be some fuel lines we're going to have to disconnect here that go to the fuel injector rail. They are held in with 2 10mm nuts, and we have to remove that because we're going to be pulling the intake basically, and the cylinder head is one piece, and the fuel rail is connected obviously to the intake. So we're just going to go around. I'm going to pull all these harnesses, and I'm going to get ready to pull this out. So with that being said, I'm going to put you on a time lapse, and we're just kind of go ahead and briskly get through this.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in...
Alright guys, so we got this head ready to come off here. The next step is super important. You're going to need an 8mm and a 10mm Allen key, and you're going to follow that sequence, if I can get it to focus, to go ahead and remove your head bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll put a screenshot of that up on in the video. I'll put it in right now actually. That way, you know, you can pause your video, do whatever you have to do. We pulled the exhaust manifold off, just have it laying down there. There's a bracket on the back of the intake you have to remove, and just, you know, unclip your wire harness and get everything out of the way. And then you'll be where we're at and ready to pull it. So let's go ahead and start pulling these. One of the big boys, the two big ones, the two, what are these? The two 10mm are going to be in the front. Actually, it's the back of the engine here by the cam phaser. Okay, now from there, the rest of these should be the small guys. 4. 5. Now you are just going to want to wiggle these around to make sure that you get them in all the way. 6. 7. 8. 9. And 10. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead with my ratchet here, the electric ratchet, and get these off the rest of the way. We will not be reusing these. They are technically a one-time use because they are what is known as torque to yield. So we will be replacing all of these head bolts. that out with the sucker. There we go. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and get a magnet. We have to pull all of these washers out of the head where the head bolts go. That way, when we pull the head, they don't fall down into the engine. Not that I mean, we'll be able to get it, but I don't want that to happen anyway. Let me go get a magnet. All right, we got all of our washers off. We got everything ready. Let's move this hose out of the way really quick here. See if our head's loose. Oh, wow. Yeah, she's loose, all right. Let's see if we can get it up. We're caught on something back here. There it is. All right, let me get that out. Okay. All right, let's take a good look here at these pistons. And other than some carbon on them, they don't really appear to be in that bad of a shape. I can see the crosshatch here on most of the cylinder wall on, what is this, number 4. Number 1 is about the same. Yeah, that's just some light carbon buildup here. So everything here looks pretty good. Let's go in the garage and flip that head over and see what we got going on. All right, guys, so here's our cylinder head, and if I turn this way here and we look at the intake valves for number 3, you can see very obviously that they are bent. But number 1 also took a hit on the intake valves, and this valve right here is ever so slightly bent. The exhaust valves actually didn't hit. I had a little bit of leak down out of the exhaust valves, but I think if we just pull the valves and lap them, slap everything back together, they'll seal up. The seats might have a little bit of carbon on them, which is pretty common on an engine with this many miles on it. Now, the way I like to check these to see if they're bent is, first I'll drop my flashlight on the ground, but what I'll do is I'll shine my flashlight here at the port, or at the combustion chamber, and I'll look through the ports, and what I'm looking for is light. So when I shined the flashlight that I just dropped through the combustion chamber on number 1, I saw some light coming from around the valve. So as long as that's not going to fall, let me grab my flashlight that I just threw across the room. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. And again, I'm just going to move my light around, and I can ever so slightly see a little bit of light coming through on this valve. And then obviously we have light coming through on this one because they're bent. Alright guys, and that's going to be it for this video. In our next video here, we're going to go ahead and start the disassembly process of the cylinder head. We do have some intake valves coming for it. I do have some valve lapping compound coming for it, and we do have some other tools like spring compressors and things like that, so that we can go ahead and tear it down further. I'm going to show you every step of the way what we need to do to get this thing sealed up and running. So please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.